Today's presentation will be on Thomas Gordon. To start my presentation, I will be talking about who Thomas Gordon is, some of his accomplishments, and the organization that he started and the models that he created within the organization that helps teachers now. Thomas Gordon was born on March 11th, 1918. He first earned his bachelor's degree from DePaul University and his master's degree at The Ohio State University. Following his master's degree, he served in the Air Forces during the World War II era. After his time of service, he earned his doctorate from the University of Chicago, in which he taught there for 5 years. He was also a licensed clinical psychologist. Gordon was married to his wife, Linda, and had 2 daughters, 2 granddaughters, and a few great-granddaughters. During the 1960s, Gordon started his own private practice, helping parents deal with their teenagers who had behavioral issues that made life difficult for them. From then on, he continued to adapt his methods, training parents, teachers, and businesses on conflict resolution, decision-making, effective communication, and other types of approaches. Gordon founded Gordon Training International that incorporated a vast amount of trainings, including the parent effectiveness training, teacher effectiveness training, and the leader effectiveness training. These are just a few of the types of trainings that Thomas Gordon created, and which has helped over millions of people from around the world. Today's presentation will focus on the teacher effectiveness training, specifically the key components and concepts, along with how to implement it within the schools and in your own classroom. And to just add on to how great this man was, he was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1997, 1998, and 1999 for his efforts. Further, he received the American Psychological Foundation's Gold Medal Award in 1999 for enduring contribution to psychology in the public interest, and received the 2000 Lifetime Achievement Award from the California Psychological Association. Next, I will be discussing some key concepts to help describe the models that Thomas Gordon created, more specifically the Teacher Effectiveness Training, also known as TET. The Teacher Effectiveness Training is derived from the Parent Effectiveness Training, which is also known as PET, which includes some similar methods to help with certain types of behavior and to help teachers specifically. The goal of this training is to ensure that the teachers have a good amount of time to actually teach the lessons implemented into their lesson planning and in the classroom, and for students to problem solve on their own when difficulties arise for them. Every classroom holds those couple of students who have a hard time staying attentive or cause problems for the teacher, which their behavior and actions normally stop or disrupt the lesson from continuing. In order for this model to be effective and for the behavior to be helped, the students need to learn the necessary skills to work through their problems. And this type of training provides and enables teachers to teach consistently with minimal interruptions from student problems and issues. It is about creating relationships with the students to help them succeed with their work and through their problems. The behavior window framework, which is included within the teacher effectiveness training, helps recognize problems that would interfere with student learning and with instruction by the teacher. This approach helps identify the individual that needs to own up to the problem and to then use the correct communication skill to help them fix the issue appropriately. There are three parts that are within the behavior window itself, which include active listening, I messages, and no-lose resolution of conflict. Now we're going to specifically talk about the behavior framework and how the pieces of that framework are useful to implement into the classroom. The first part of the framework, the behavior window, allows teachers to identify the problem at hand and then figure out and solidify who was the source of the problem and why the problem occurred. This type of problem is one that interferes with classroom instruction and learning. The model focuses on if the problem was caused by the teacher, the student, the teacher and the student, or neither the teacher and the student. In each classroom, the resolution will differ based on the environment, the students that the teacher is working with, and the teaching style the teacher utilizes. The next piece of the framework is called active listening. This is when the problem specifically belongs to the student. This strategy provides the student an opportunity to be heard and express how they feel about the situation. This type of strategy is extremely beneficial. It gives the student a chance to help explain their behavior for their wrongdoing. This creates a stronger relationship between the teacher and the student, along with helping the teacher learn more about why the student consistently behaved the way they did, helping them dig for the root cause instead of disciplining them right away, which is not an effective approach. To implement this in the classroom, it's important to have an area where the teacher can quietly meet with the student so that the student feels like they have a safe place to discuss what happened with the teacher. The next part of the framework is iMessages, not the kind of message between people who communicate with iPhones, just to let you know. This type of problem falls back on the teacher since they are unable to teach due to an unsolved or noted behavior that interferes with classroom guidelines and rules and expected behavior protocols. There are three parts to this piece of the model. The first part describes the non-blaming reason what is not acceptable. Part 2 describes the feeling behind the behavior. And the third part states how the behavior affects what was not supposed to happen. For example, if many students are disrupting a lesson because they are talking, it creates frustration for the teacher because the students are not following the guidelines and class rules set by the teacher. In order for iMessages to be successful, the relationship between the teacher and the student needs to be steady, or we need to practice positive relationships between the teacher and the student. If students cannot take ownership of the problem at hand, or if the students can take ownership of the problem at hand, then the iMessage approach works. It's important for the students to know the class guidelines and rules set by the teacher at the beginning of the year, and that the teacher consistently reminds the students what those class rules and expectations are so that they can be reminded when their behavior is unacceptable and that they need to continue to work toward ensuring that they follow the guidelines set by the teacher. The final piece of this framework is the no-lose conflict resolution. There are 6 parts to this model. The goal is to come to a solution that the teacher and student can agree on. For this model to work, students need to know that they cannot blame others for their actions, and that they know they can be listened to if needed. It is about not blaming, not judging the student for what is occurring so that they can come to a solution. When the teacher and the student have a conversation, the focus is on the actual problem at hand. Here are the 6 steps of this piece of the model. Define the need of the teacher and the student. This is important because you can understand what the problem was so that the teacher and the student can come to a solution together. You can use the iMessage for this approach. This step is crucial so blame does not occur. It's important to listen and hear one another. Next is to brainstorm solutions. That both parties list all the solutions that they would believe would be best to solve the issue at hand. This should be done on their own so that they can quietly work on solving what they believe would help the solution be figured out. Next step is to evaluate the solution. It's important for the teacher and the student to go over those solutions written down together and discuss what would be the best approach. Next is to choose a solution. This can be one solution that came about when writing them down, or it can be a combination of multiple solutions. The fifth step is to implement the solution. Ensure that both parties understand their responsibility to ensure the solution does follow through. And the last step is to check the results. Follow up with each other to ensure the solution is actually solved. An example of this type of step is, say that two students are having a conflict with each other and they are having an issue either with getting along or with sharing toys. So there's a conflict among them and it's disrupting other students in the classroom. The first step is to identify the problem and the need that the student and the teacher need to figure out. So the issue is that the student needs to find a way to either get along with the other student or to simply ignore the actions that are occurring. The next step would to brainstorm the solutions so they can come up with a few solutions that would help figure out the problem between the two students. And the teacher helps them through this. And after they go through those steps, they will check in with each other. And if the solution does work, then they can move forward. And if the solution they decide to use does not work, then they need to go through the process again. Here are a few quotes by Gordon that I believe are important to think of when using his methods.